There's a story about a king in Africa. And he had a best friend that had a habit of doing something that really irritated him. No matter what happened, this best friend would always say, "Oh, it's good. It's all good." Well, one day they were out hunting, and it was the best friend's job to load the gun and hand the gun to the king. Well, the king prepared to fire his gun, and all of a sudden it backfired on him and blew his thumb off. Well, his best friend, as he always did, turned to the king and said, "It's good. It's all good." The king was enraged. He said, "This is not good. I just blew off my thumb. I'm putting you in jail." So he sentenced his best friend to jail. Well, a year later, the king is out hunting again. But this time, he's hunting in a very dangerous area where there were cannibals all around. He was captured by the cannibals. They bring him back to their tribe. They put him up on the stake, tie him to the stake, bring in all the logs, and just about to light the fire when they notice the king has no thumb. Well, this is a very superstitious tribe. So they couldn't burn someone that was less than whole. So they released him and let him go. Well, the king, on his way back to the castle, started to contemplate this whole thing and thought about his friend who was still in prison. And he suddenly had regret for putting him in the prison because he was right. So as soon as he gets back to his castle, he goes down into the dungeon, sees his friend there, and he said, "I have to say I'm really sorry. You were right all along. It was good. It was good that I got my thumb blown off. I am so sorry that I put you in prison. I will free you now. Come on out. But I'm sorry. Please forgive me." And his best friend said, "Oh, it's all good." And this irritated the king again, and he says, "Now, come on. You have been rotting in prison for a whole year. How can you say that's all good?" And he said, "Because if I wasn't here, I would have been with you." You might say that the king and his best friend had a different way of looking at things. In fact, their truth about the world, about creation, was different. Well, today we're going to talk about truth. And we're going to continue our series based on this book, What the Mystics Know. We are going to start part 4, and it's entitled, "To Discover the Truth, You Must Become the Truth." You must become the truth. We talk a lot about what the truth is and how to know the truth. But how to become the truth? How do you think we do that? Well, our author, Richard Rohr, says that it starts with perception, how we view things. He said that there are 2 different ways of viewing things. The first way to view things is that God will love me if I change. Now, I was brought up with this idea. Every week at Sunday school, that's what they would tell me, that I had to change, and if I changed in the right ways, then maybe I would get to go to heaven after I die. This is the idea of a God out there somewhere that is taking a list of all the good things and the bad things that we do. And this is kind of a scary God. This is a God to be afraid of because you never quite know if you get it right. You never know if you're really pleasing God or you're making a mistake and you're displeasing God. So he says that a lot of people, in fact, most religious communities think this way. That if I only change, then God will love me. But then he said that there's a smaller percentage that believe this. They believe that God loves me unconditionally in order that I can change, or so that I can change. And this is a big difference. There's a big difference here. Because people who believe this believe in unconditional love. They believe in a benevolent universe. A universe that not only expects us to evolve and change, but it supports us in that process. That it's got our back. It's right there. This essence of God is this unconditional love that's with us no matter what it is that we're doing, no matter how many mistakes we make, or how many failures we have. And you can feel the difference in those two things. Having someone following you around waiting for you to do something wrong, or someone or an essence that supports you in whatever you're doing, even when you make mistakes. And we all do. We're human. That's part of being in this lifetime. So he says that it starts with this idea that God loves me so unconditionally, so much, that I can change, I can transform, I can trust the universe enough that I can be me. I can be that unique creation of God that I was sent here to be. And all of us, even though we are all one, we are all unique. We all have our own reason for being here. And that reason has something to do with making the world a better place. And all of us are a part of that. We may not know what that looks like right now. We may not know how that is going to play out. But let me tell you that if you have a pulse, there's a reason that you're here. There's something to fulfill. And that is simply to be who you are. To express that at such a depth, at such a level, that it changes not only us, but the entire world. Richard Rohr talks about a chemist who became a philosopher. His name is Michael Polanyi. Good, interesting name. But he taught his co-workers, the scientists that he worked with, that there was something a little deeper than genius. And imagine that if you've worked around really incredibly smart people, around scientists, a lot of people really rely on their intellect. And he taught that there was something beyond genius, something deeper. In fact, he said that if you can get beyond rational thought, that you can dwell within all things. Dwell within all things. And when you can understand whatever it is you're working on at a much deeper level. But it's beyond the intellect. Dr. John, a physician that I know, worked in an intensive care unit of the pediatrics unit. And he went into work one morning, and he was briefed by the doctors from the night before. And they told him about a baby girl, baby Sophie, who had been diagnosed with whooping cough. And she was getting worse. And they were afraid that she would probably die that day. Dr. John rolled his eyes and thought, okay, it's going to be one of those days. And he went about his shift until he got a phone call from one of the head nurses at that unit. And she said, it's happening. Baby Sophie is getting blue, and she can't breathe anymore. And just off the top of his head, he told this nurse, he said, turn the baby over and hit the baby sharply on the back. The nurse just hesitated for a second and said, all right, doctor, put down the phone. Immediately, Dr. John started second-guessing himself. What am I thinking of? I just told the nurse to hit this baby on the back who is dying, who is critically ill. What am I thinking? And as his mind is going through all of these scenarios, the intensive care unit stacked. He dropped everything and ran up the stairs to the room where the little baby was. Ran into the room, and there was a whole group of nurses with these Cheshire cat grins on their face. Where's my patient? He said. Where is she? And one of the nurses said, she's sitting right here, and pointed to a perfectly healthy-looking baby sitting on the bed. Dr. John said, this is really not funny. Show me where my patient is right now. And the nurse said, Dr. John, I want to show you something. She said, when I hit that baby on the back, she reached over and picked up one of these plastic green dices. And it was really gross, had stuff all over it. But she picked it up and she said, this is what flew out of baby Sophie's mouth. Dr. John was able to go to a place deeper than his intellect, to follow what his gifts were. And I know this really happened because this is the same doctor that walked into the hospital when baby Isaac was born, not so much of a baby anymore, and he told the nurses, don't feed him, I'm going to send him to the intensive care unit. And if they had fed him, they found out that his vocal cords were not working. He would have drowned. This is the same exact doctor. And I know many lives that have been blessed to this day because of him. This is what happens when we can move beyond our intellect, when we can truly be who we were meant to be. The Buddha said, your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart, give yourself to it. Become it. Immerse yourself in it. Have you ever noticed that when you're doing something that you love, that you're really gifted at, that time just flies by? I believe that this is why we are here on this planet. To truly be who we were meant to be. To give of ourselves at a level that we never have before. To share our gifts with this world. In Corinthians, it talks about this. Paul talks about gifts, and he said, now there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are varieties of services, but the same Lord. There are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. So we just need to allow that to be activated in us. To truly use our spiritual gifts. And to reach out in life in a way that we never have before. Because each of us are unique. We have something to give this world. And we have things that we shouldn't be giving this world. You know, we live in a society that believes that we should all be average at all of these things, reading, writing, and we get into this idea that those things that we aren't good at, we really have to work at, instead of focusing on our gifts of spirit, of what we're really good at. When I was in seminary, one of my instructors gave me a piece of advice that shook my world, that I hold on to today. And he said, Sheryl, if you go around doing everything or attempting to do everything, then you are stopping other people from using their gifts. And that's very true. If we try to be everything, do everything, and be good at it, for one thing, we're going to fail. For another thing, there's someone else that has that gift, and we're holding them back from expressing it. Because we are gifted at certain things. Take my singing, for example. Please, take my singing. If you have been here for any amount of time, you know that I really can't carry a note in a bucket. And I've had people come up to me, musicians and singers, and they would say, Reverend Sheryl, I can teach you to sing. Well, for one thing, that would probably be a very painful experience for both of us. And if I could finally carry some little tune, it really wouldn't be very good. You know, it would be mediocre at best. Why should I waste my time working on something I'm not gifted at when I can put that time into expressing my gifts of who I truly am? Later on in Corinthians it said, all these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually just as the Spirit chooses. Just as we choose to express ourselves and our gifts. But we hold back. A lot of times we're afraid. We're afraid. What if we fail? So how do we do this? How do we become the truth? How do we dwell in whatever it is that we're working on? Well, in order to do this, we have to do this. We have to act. We have to go ahead in faith and step forward and say, you know, I'm feeling this urge to work on this gift, to give this gift. I am going to step into it. So it takes just doing it. And we will feel scared. We will feel like we're working without a net. But once we act, then we start to understand. We understand what's going on. Just as the doctor, when he acted by telling the nurse to give that baby the Heimlich maneuver, then he understood what was going on. And once we start to understand at a deeper level, then we start to trust. We start to trust that this truly is a benevolent universe. In fact, it's a universe that supports us in living to our fullest. And once we trust, then we're more likely to act again, which builds greater understanding, greater trust, and it's like a snowball. And we can get to deeper places that we never have before. But in order to do this, we have to let go. Let go of that old idea that there's someone following us around or something following us around expecting us to fail. The universe is supporting us. It's right there. And even when we do fail, the universe will be there to catch us and to move us ahead to our new place in God. In fact, Richard Rohr called this becoming a holy fool. A holy fool. And he said that holy fools trust enough to let God go and let God do something new on this earth. To let go and let God do something new on this earth. I love that. That they no longer fit into the old way of doing things. They know who they are, and they can comfortably be a child of God. Doesn't that sound good? Being comfortable in your own skin, being comfortable in your gifts, being comfortable in this life, and knowing that everything is for us, working for us. Metaphysical movie, and that's called Beggar Vance. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Just love that movie. And it's about a golfer named Ranulph Juno. Ranulph was an amateur champion before the war started. And he joined the war, and he got the Medal of Honor. But most of his group was killed. And so he came back to the United States, and he had some issues. And because of that, he didn't go back to his hometown, which is Savannah, until 5 years after he came back to the United States. When he finally went back to Savannah, people knew that before he left, he was a great golfer. So someone organized it so that he could golf with Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen. So they were in this golf tournament when Ranulph tees up and he slices the ball horribly, and it goes into the woods. He goes into the woods looking for his ball all by himself, and he sees it there. And he stands over the ball and he looks, and there's a very small space that he could hit that ball through. And as he looks out into that space, all those terrible memories start flooding back. It all comes back to him. He loses all confidence. And he looks down at the ball, and he reaches down to pick it up, which would mean he forfeited the match. And just as he was about to touch the ball, his caddy shows up and said, "You just have to lighten up your grip a bit." And Randolph said, "I can't do this." Beggar Vance said, "What I'm talking about is a game that can't be won, only played." Randolph said, "You don't understand." Beggar said, "I don't need to understand. Ain't a soul on this entire earth that ain't got a burden to carry he don't understand. And you're not alone at that, but you've been carrying this one long enough. Time to go on. Time to lay it down." "But I don't know how." Beggar said, "You got a choice. You can stop or you can start." Randolph said, "Start? Block it. Where?" "Right back to where you've always been. Then stand there, still, and remember." "But it's just too long ago. I can't do that. It's too long ago." Beggar said, "Oh, no, sir. It was just one moment ago. Time for you to come out of the shadows, Juno. Time for you to choose." "But I can't." "Oh, yes, you can. Because you ain't alone. I'm right here with you. I've been here all along. Now, play the game. Play your game. The one that only you were meant to play. The one that was given to you when you came into this world. You ready? Strike that ball, Juna. Don't hold nothing back. Give it everything. Now's the time. Let yourself remember. Remember your swing. That's right, Juna. Settle yourself. Let's go. Now it's time. Now is the time. The universe is calling us to play our game. Our game. And we're the only one that can do that. That can play our game. That can go deeper. That can go beyond our intellects. Beyond our genius. Into a place where we can express ourselves fully. And express our gifts. And when we do, when we take that chance, when we risk it, when we put all we have into that swing, our world will be a different place. But it starts with each one of us. It's time.